So, picture this. I get home after a ridiculously long day, dragging myself through the door of my tiny, slightly messy apartment in the middle of the city. I'm thinking about nothing but shoving my feet up and maybe watching some mindless TV, and then, bam, I walk right in to find someone else's stuff. Like someone's actual stuff, unpacked and scattered kind of everywhere, right on my couch, my kitchen counter, my desk, everywhere. And there's this person, completely nonchalant, kneeling on the floor, unwrapping a stack of what looks like books or maybe emergency snacks or something, totally absorbed in their little unpacking world, like it's the most normal thing to be doing in my place. I stop dead in the doorway, blinking like I just walked into some parallel universe where people just wander into other people's apartments and make themselves at home without a heads up. Because I swear, in my reality, that's not how it works. Excuse me? I finally croak out, mostly because my brain is wrestling with how to make any sense of this. The stranger looks up, tilts their head like, oh, hey, I was just, putting my stuff away. Like, that explains everything. And I'm standing there with a grocery bag still half in my hand. A slow realization creeping over me. No one told me that someone was moving in. No text, no call, no passive-aggressive post-it note on the fridge, nothing. I mean, who even does that? Just drops by your apartment, unpacks their life, and acts like it's completely normal? My heart's thumping, and I'm pretty sure my face has hit the shade of a confused tomato. Did I somehow miss the memo? Was there an emergency mix-up? Maybe it's some weird prank? But then I look around, and no, this is definitely real. My sneakers? The ones I shoved under the coat rack this morning? Jess. Well, okay, I don't even know their name yet, but let's call them Jess. Jess has one of those sneakers on the sofa like it's a throne. Before I can say anything else, the doorbell rings. I freeze, hoping for some sort of explanation, a lost friend, a landlord, anyone who can help me decode this madness. But no, it's just my phone buzzing in my pocket, and when I pull it out, it's a message from Mike. Mike, our mutual friend, who, knowing him, is probably involved in some way. The text reads, "Surprise! Jess needed a place for a bit. Hope you're cool." Wait, cool? I'm standing here in my own freaking apartment, a stranger unpacking my belongings, and Mike's treating this like it's just Tuesday. I take a deep breath, trying not to freak out. Not a break-in, sure, but it feels weird enough to make my head spin. At least if I remembered agreeing to something, maybe this wouldn't feel like such a scene out of a bad sitcom. I glance back at Jess, who looks up again, this time with a small, nervous smile, like they're suddenly aware that perhaps just crashing here without a proper introduction might not be the smoothest move. This was going to be interesting. So, Jess, that's the name I had now, officially assigned to the uninvited occupant of my living room. I guess it's fair to say she wasn't exactly blending in bright purple hair and a messy bun, a vintage band tee that looked way too cool for my slightly battered couch, and sneakers that had apparently gone on a journey without me noticing. She gave me a half smile, kind of awkward but honest. I squinted at my phone again. Mike's message sat there like a bomb waiting to go off in my brain. Surprise! Jess needed a place for a bit. Hope you're cool. Yeah, right, cool wasn't exactly what I was feeling. More like utterly blindsided and borderline panicking, but who wants to text that back? Instead, I tried to keep my voice steady because, adulting and all. So, temporary? Like, how temporary are we talking here? I asked, waving vaguely toward the pile of bags spilling over the armchair. Jess shrugged, as if she actually just showed up for a weekend and not the indefinite future of my apartment. Mike said just a little while, his words, not mine, she said, avoiding eye contact for a second. Then she glanced around the place, maybe seeing it as her new home or maybe wondering what planet she'd landed on. Honestly, I didn't get the full rundown either. It was kind of sudden, and I didn't want to leave you high and dry. There it was, the classic Murphy's Law version of helping a friend. When Mike decides you need help, it somehow lands on your lap without warning or a user manual. Mike always meant well, but his great ideas were like throwing a wrench into a clockwork. Sometimes things got weirdly complicated. I rubbed the back of my neck, trying to picture my life with Jess suddenly living here. My space, usually a solo fortress of solitude, suddenly shared with someone who probably had totally different rhythms, habits, and snacks. Which, by the way, I should have asked about immediately given how protective I am of my fridge. I wasn't exactly prepped for this, I admitted. You realize I'm a creature of habit, right? Like I schedule my showers and my coffee breaks. I'm not great at surprise guests. Jess chuckled softly, the tension around her shoulders easing just a bit. I get it. I'm kind of the opposite. Spontaneous and chaotic, apparently. Yeah, that's one word for it, I joked, trying to make peace with the sudden chaos perched on my couch. We stood there for a moment, me watching her systematically tackle the stack of books, some dog-eared, some new-looking, that now had a new home on my coffee table. The realization slowly dawned on me that this wasn't some short visit. This was Jess moving in, like, really moving in. Yes, and Mike, the mutual disaster and well-meaning friend, He hadn't bothered to clue me in beyond a casual text. Figures. That next half hour was filled with what I'd call an awkward truce. Jess told me a bit about herself. She was waiting on a break-in with her job, sorting out some family stuff. Really just needed a place to stay for a bit. I nodded along, throwing in the obligatory sympathetic sounds and comments. Meanwhile, I was doing mental calculations about how long a bit might be and how much of my personal space I was willing to surrender. My apartment, which was already small, felt even smaller with 2 people and twice the stuff. Jess's things, clothes, books, a couple of plants had staked out corners like invading forces. And as I watched her unpack, I noticed she had a ridiculous number of coffee mugs, like a collection. I could only imagine what my measly 2 mugs were going to do in that ecosystem. The more we talked, the more I realized Jess wasn't this scary intruder I initially imagined. She was funny in a disarming way, quick with a joke or a sarcastic quip about her own life, but still, someone living here unexpectedly? It felt like tipping the first domino in a chain reaction that I wasn't remotely prepared for. I gave her a quick tour of the place. The kitchen, the bathroom, which I silently prayed she'd treat like sacred ground, and then my tiny workspace from which I did all my endless scrolling and random work that made me barely get by. Just a fair warning, I'm kinda particular about clean surfaces and stolen food, I said with an awkward grin. Jess laughed. Noted, I'll try and keep the kitchen wars to a minimum. The big question hanging there, unsaid but massive, was how long she planned on staying. Temporary was still vague enough to be terrifying. Hours? Days? Weeks? Months? I still wanted to know if my sanctuary was about to turn into a once-in-a-blue-moon hangout or a full-on cohabitation situation. Jess seemed to sense my hesitation. Look, we'll figure it out as we go. Mike promised it'd be short-term, but, well, you know how life doesn't always stick to plans, right? Life never stuck to my plans either, apparently. Just when I thought I might collapse into the couch and mentally prepare for the coming days, a buzzing sound interrupted us. My phone was lighting up with another message from Mike. Glad you're cool. Lunch is on me tomorrow to celebrate new roommates. I stared at the screen, equal parts amused and exasperated. Celebrating seemed like a weird move for what felt like an accidental invasion of privacy, but I guess this was Mike's version of smooth. Jess looked over and winked. See? He's got your back in his own unique way. A reluctant smile tugged at the corner of my mouth. Okay, so maybe this was going to be an adventure. One messy, unpredictable adventure. And as much as I hated to admit it, there was something sort of exciting about turning my solo world upside down. Little did I know that excitement was just the calm before the storm. The first week with Jess was, well, it was like sharing my life with a whirlwind who happened to bring a tornado with her. Day 1 started with the classic morning schedule shock. I'm a creature of habit, up at 7:00, shower, coffee, read the news on my couch. Jess? Up at who knows when, blaring music through the apartment at what I swear was pre-dawn light, as if announcing to the world, good morning. Or good night. Who cares? Here's a dance party. My first thought was, oh great, guess I won't be sleeping with earbuds tonight. But the real battlefield was the bathroom. Sharing one tiny bathroom between 2 people who have very different ideas of quick and clean led to a silent war. I'd step in for my ritual shower, only to find leftover shampoo caps perched on the sink like miniature trophies. And some mornings, Jess was in there so long I started to wonder if she was hosting a conference call with her hairdryer and curling iron. I once found a lipstick stain on the mirror right before an important video call of mine. Not exactly the kind of decoration I wanted. And then, the food mysteriously started disappearing. I'm talking the small stuff at first. The last chocolate bar I was saving, half of a sandwich I thought I'd left untouched in the fridge. I'd ask Jess casually, hey, any chance you saw my dark chocolate? And she'd give me this innocent look like, what dark chocolate? Yeah, sure. I get it, sharing is caring, but when you live alone 99% of the time, your snacks are sacred. I even resorted to hiding the good stuff behind the veggie drawer. So far, that seemed to work, until I caught her eyeing it suspiciously. Jess's quirks were a whole other arena of fun. She loved rearranging things for better vibes, which mostly meant she'd shuffle my carefully positioned books and papers into artful piles that looked suspiciously like a hurricane had passed. One evening, I returned from work to find the couch cushions swapped out with some ratty old blankets of hers. When I asked, she grinned and said, thought it'd be more cozy. Cozy? Maybe? Practical? Nope. My back wasn't happy about it. On my part, I wasn't exactly winning roommate of the year either. I'm forgetful when stressed, and Jess's presence overtook my little routines. I might have snapped once or twice about shared responsibilities, mostly because I'm big on clean dishes and not having dust collect like it's building a sculpture on the shelves. Jess was either oblivious or playing the forget-me-not card expertly. Honestly, sometimes it was hard to tell. But the real turning point came when I accidentally stumbled onto her secret. I was searching for my headphones, always misplaced in this chaos, and found her laptop open on the desk, paused on the chat window where someone was asking about a significant step. I'm nosy, I admit it, and the curiosity caught me. The messages hinted at something serious, something Jess clearly wasn't ready to share. Suddenly, all my annoyance faded into confusion and concern. This stranger invading my apartment wasn't just some random roommate. She was fighting her own wars, tucked behind those bright purple strands and chaotic energy. I confronted Jess that night, trying not to sound like a creep, but desperate to understand what she was dealing with. She hesitated, shutting the laptop and giving me a look that said, "Well, you got me." Turns out, Jess was navigating some pretty heavy stuff. Family drama, job uncertainties, and a complicated relationship situation no one had warned me about. That messy urgency at my place? It wasn't just her personality, it was her way of holding things together when everything else was falling apart. The dynamic shifted after that. The kitchen food wars and bathroom time trials didn't magically vanish, but they felt a bit more survivable when weighed against what Jess was going through. For one, I stopped being quite so territorial, realizing my neat little life was never as solid or predictable as I pretended. There was still tension, like when she used my electric kettle for tea at midnight, or the time I found my favorite hoodie tossed over the radiator to dry, thanks to a caffeine-fueled late-night spill. But instead of snapping, I started seeing those moments as part of the bigger, messy picture we were both reluctantly drawn into. By the end of the week, Jess and I had fallen into a strange rhythm, not quite harmonious, but less like two ships crashing and more like two clumsy dancers finding a beat neither of us owned. And just when I thought I might start getting used to the madness, Mike dropped by one evening, grinning from ear to ear like he'd just pulled off the greatest prank ever. "So, how's the new cohabitation experiment?" he asked with what I swear was barely contained mischief. I gave him a look that probably screamed, "Send help," and wondered silently if there'd ever be an end to this unexpected arrangement, or if this was just the beginning of a brand new kind of chaos. That night, after Mike left with a chuckle and a warning that good luck wasn't just a joke but a serious send-off, Jess and I finally hit what felt like a truce-level survival mode paired with a surprising dread of honest conversation. Neither of us was exactly a social butterfly, and with everything going on, exhaustion was a common language. We ended up sprawled on my somewhat lumpy couch, surrounded by a mix of her belongings and mine, as if the apartment was wearing a patchwork quilt made of our chaotic lives. Neither of us said much at first, just the kind of quiet that doesn't feel uncomfortable but necessary after a week of accidental collision and minor explosions. "I'm really sorry if I've turned your place into a tornado zone," Jess mumbled, her hands fiddling with a coffee mug from her collection, tracing the rim like it held some secret. I shrugged, trying to sound casual even though I meant it. "Hey, I never thought I'd get used to a midnight tea party or a bathroom occupancy schedule, but here we are." I forced a grin, hoping to lighten the mood. She laughed then, a soft, real laugh that felt like it broke a little bit of the tension hanging over us. "See, I'm not just chaos. I've got layers." "Yeah, layers like an onion you didn't want to peel," I teased, but the humor was gentle. "Look, I get it now. Whatever you're juggling, it's not just messy roommate syndrome. You're dealing with a lot." Jess looked at me, her eyes unexpectedly vulnerable. "Thanks. I didn't want to dump all of that on you. I guess I thought if I kept up the chaos, maybe the hard stuff would stay hidden." "Funny how the mess we make outside sometimes matches the mess inside," I said, more seriously this time. "But hey, at least we're in it together. For now." For the first time, it felt like the apartment was less of a battleground and more of a shared refuge. Sure, there were mismatched belongings and ongoing kitchen negotiations ahead, but beneath the clutter was the start of something honest. Over the next few days, the awkward stumbles between Jess and me started to settle into a comforting, imperfect rhythm. Jess took to labeling her food in the fridge with quirky doodles, a kind of peace treaty, while I found myself learning the art of flexible shower schedules. We even started sharing late-night playlists, revealing music tastes that, frankly, I hadn't expected to enjoy but did. My own world, which once felt so rigid and insulated, began to stretch in unexpected ways. Jess pushed me out of my comfort zone with her spontaneous ideas, like an impromptu city rooftop visit or experimenting with weird coffee blends that I pretended to hate but secretly enjoyed. Mike, ever the wild card, popped in frequently to check on the chaos he'd unleashed. Each visit was an odd mix of amusement and sympathy. "So, now that you have the full Jess experience, what's the verdict? Genius or madness?" I laughed, the kind of laugh that comes from realizing you're maybe both. "I don't know, it's a little bit of each." But honestly, I couldn't have predicted how much I'd need this." Jess caught my eye and gave a small smile, like we'd reached an unspoken understanding. Neither of us had planned on this arrangement, but somehow, we were making it work. As I lay in bed one night, the apartment unusually quiet, I thought about the strange turns life takes, how sometimes the biggest surprises start with the most awkward hellos. And yeah, Mike's so-called great idea might have been a bit of madness, but maybe that's exactly what makes a story worth telling. Because in my small, unpredictable city apartment with an unexpected roommate and a million tiny conflicts, I found a kind of messy, beautiful balance I hadn't even been looking for. So, would I do it again? Invite another unexpected roommate to drop in? Let's just say I'm keeping Mike's number on speed dial, ready for the next accidental adventure. But this time, I might actually want a heads up.